Hello all, it's Joe. I'm going to do a quick video. You can also go watch the Windows related videos to this as well because a lot of it crosses over. But again, there is enough difference that I feel like a separate video is often warranted when we're talking about certainly command line stuff related to how you do things on Windows versus how you do it on a Mac. I mean, at the end of the day, it's a lot the same, right? I mean, these computers all kind of do the same thing. It's just a matter of style and history and how they mix and match and all that kind of stuff. So basically, what we're going to talk about is probably most people's experience using a computer these days is I asked the question in class, like, for how many people, right, are basically all of the files that you've ever used like in your downloads folder, right? And that works. I mean, these days we have a scenario, right, where the people that design these sorts of systems, should the average everyday user have to worry about like where a file is? I mean, do you worry about that on your phone? No, right? Somebody does though. So it's not the end user, but certainly if we're going to work on the technical side, if we're going to be in IT, for example, we can't be ignorant of this stuff, right? I mean, we've got to know how this stuff works because an iPhone, right, if you were to take away the slick graphical user interface, guess what? It's just a Unix system as well. There is literally a command line prompt on an iPhone. Now, again, that's something that an end user would never, ever see. But if you're developing for the iPhone, you can actually access an iPhone via the command line prompt. And for a lot of things, it's sometimes necessary to do certain things when you're in that development process. Because again, mobile phones, Android phones, iPhones, they're little Unix systems, right? So to the end user, they don't really care. We have to care though. And so eventually, if you've been keeping just everything in your downloads folder, eventually that sort of strategy is going to run out of gas, right? You're going to need to, basically, manage your files on your computer in a certain way. And again, we'll be touching on some of that, or at least basically know if you're not going to have a strategy for like how you manage your files on your computer, is at least know like where to go get them, right? So you're just not always like endlessly searching and that kind of stuff. So what we're going to do here is, first thing we're going to do is we're going to open up the graphical user interface for how a Mac views folders and files. There's a couple of different ways you can do this. First way is you go over here to the lower left and you open up a Finder window, right? So a Finder window. And again, your Finder window will likely look different than mine because your stuff over here, well, might look different. You notice that I have my home directory here at the top. And I have other folders that I've kind of dragged over here from out in here so that I have quick access to them. I use iCloud extensively on the Mac for syncing, so that any Mac. So again, if I buy a new Mac, again, I just replaced this. I bought a new Mac last year, and it's so nice to have cloud services, right, where you can, for all the stuff that I have on this machine, you can just you just connect it to the cloud like iCloud, and everything is automatically synced. So that works really well. And so, yeah, so your stuff over here is going to look slightly different than mine. But again, we'll talk about, again, you should have some of the same stuff over here, like your applications folder. Again, the stuff that's in your downloads folder, your music, if you have music, movies, blah, 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 blah. The other way you can get to the Finder is that you can click on the Macintosh hard drive thing over here. So that's kind of like, this is kind of like the Mac's version of the C drive from Windows, although Macs do not use drive letters like you do on Windows. So it's another way. Notice it's basically the same window, but where you land is different, right? So it's different if you are opening a Finder from here, in which case you typically get access to, it'll typically default to like your most recent files that you've been working with, right? Notice I've been doing lots of screenshots recently to get ready for labs and that kind of stuff. And so that's definitely in my most used files recently. So it shows you files that you've been using recently, including a couple of Word docs there, I guess. But when you open up a Finder over here using the Macintosh hard drive, you tend to get something different, right? Now you might be saying, wait a minute, I don't have this over here. How do you turn that on? Well, basically make sure you don't have anything highlighted out here, right? No apps in the foreground or nothing like that, so that it says Finder over here in the upper left. Click Finder, then go to Settings. And then what you want to do is basically what I do is I just turn all these on. So anything that connected servers, external disk, if I plug in a thumb drive, for example, right, I want to see an icon for that show up over here on the right-hand side. So notice that I have hard disk checked. So if I uncheck that, right? Notice it goes away, right? If I check it, then I get the little hard drive icon back, all right? So I like having that over there because what that does is when I double click on this, where I land is at the top level of the hard drive, right? We only go down from here into the file and folder structure, right? So notice that we have the applications folder, right? And there's all my applications. There's a library folder, all Macs have them. That's where a lot of your system extensions, drivers, and all that kind of stuff are at. You always have the system file. This is where macOS itself is at, along with some other stuff. And then you have the users folder, right? I have a user on this system. The user is Jay Axberg, right? Oops. I always do that. The user is Jay Axberg. So every user that's on a system, we should see that they have a user folder where their stuff is kept. Again, we can have multiple users on a machine. So for example, I could go in here, right, and look at the accounts that are on the system. Sorry, users and groups, there it is. Right, so we currently just have one right now, Joe Axberg. There's no other ones. I could add more users to the system, right? So if I wanted somebody else to be able to use this computer, but I want them to have, you know, their own account and their own files and that kind of stuff, I can go and create a user. You're going to be doing this stuff in Module 3. Right now, though, I am the only admin. And somehow, because we have our iCloud accounts linked, somehow, some way, I'm always because my wife has a Mac, I have a Mac, and for some reason, because we share an iCloud account and we share all of our Apple services, so Apple Music, News, all the rest of it, for some reason her icon is always overriding mine on my computer, and we've never figured out why, but oh well, it doesn't matter. So anyway, there's only one user on this system, and that's me. So this is my directory, right, where my stuff, right, so my downloads, my documents, my desktop stuff is all in there. And of course, on a Mac, you can switch how it looks around, right? Some people like the grid of icons like this. Sometimes it's nice to see the list where you can see like when it was created, you know, like how big it is, all that kind of stuff, right? Sometimes that is handy or whatever. But some people just kind of leave it like this. So now I'm down into, so again, I've went down, right? So I was originally all the way up here, right? Which again, if you go to this view with the column view, you can see you're starting at the top. This little column view that shows you how you drill down into the file system. So you have the top level Macintosh hard drive. Here's users. Here's my account. Here's my stuff, right? So here is my movies folder, right? All that kind of stuff is here. Oops, sorry. Let's go to that again. Here is, for example, my development folder. Here are the labs that we've been working with the last couple of days. So here's that Module 1 introduction. Here's the Module 2 stuff that we've been working with in Lab 2, right? Now, all of this stuff is viewable, right, via the command line as well. Let me blow this up so that hopefully you can see it easier, right? So notice when I open up a terminal, it says that it's in the J. Axberg folder. So indeed, if I do a present working directory, a PWD, it says that I am in users J. Axberg. Here I'm in top level of the file system, users J. Axberg. Here, I keep hitting the thing. Here I am as well, right? So I am top level of the file system. The slash there means the root level. One level under root is users. One level under that is J. Axberg. If I do an LS here, I can see that I have applications, desktop, documents, downloads, right? And again, see the same thing over here, right? Applications, right? So I see the same stuff, applications, development, downloads. So all the same stuff here, right? It's just two views into the same thing. It really is. Now, when we talking about groupings of files out here, for example, like the little blue folder icon, indeed, we use the term folder to describe that. That's not the term that we use when we're on the command line. We tend to use this term called directory. So when I'm looking at a GUI, there's the applications folder, right? There's the development folder. But if I'm talking about it out here, it would be called a directory. They're the same thing. There's, again, just two views to the same thing. So here I can click on development. Here's some stuff in here. If I go into development over here using that CD command, change directory. So I am currently at this level of the file system. I want to go down into development, right? Do. So I do a CD, do an LS, And again, notice all the same stuff is there, right? So out here in the GUI, if I want to go back up, of course, that's pretty easy, right? Depending on what you're doing. So even if we were using this view, I could go down, right? Go all the way to the top. So let's go, oopsie, sorry. Let's go all the way to the top. Just open up the window again, right? So Macintosh hard drive, down into users, down into JAXberg, down into development, right? And I can just keep going down into Jupyter, down into source files, right? Until I run out of folders to drill down into, kind of thing. If I want to go back up, I can, of course, press that button, right, to quote unquote go back up in the file system. And again, you can switch this view around, right, so that you're just always like looking at the big ones, like this, right? Jupyter, source files, like that, right? And then back up. So same thing can happen over here on the command line interface. So for example, right now I am down into users JAXberg development, right? So I'm in users JAXberg development. If I want to go back up a layer to JAXberg, what I do is I do a CD, and then I use this operator called the dot. Dot means where I'm at. Notice what happens when I just type CD change directory dot. Nothing. Dot is shorthand for where I'm at. So if I CD to dot, that means nothing happens. You stay in the same place that you're at. And again, that's useful for other stuff. We'll talk about that later. CD dot means go up a layer, right? So now I am no longer down in development, right? And now back up in users JAXberg. Notice what the command line does when I go down. So if I'm in, for example, users JAXberg and I go down into a directory, it shows me that directory that I'm now in my prompt here. So it's always showing you where you're at relative to your home directory, right? That's kind of how the Mac's terminal works. So for example, if I go up and then CD down into, let's go to the desktop folder, right? So now it says that I'm down in the desktop folder, again, relative to that right there. Now what's in my desktop folder, right? Well, the same stuff, right, that's out here on the GUI. I have a bunch of movies, I have a bunch of screenshots that I've been taking, right? The GUI, of course, kind of groups them together, makes them look pretty and whatnot, but this is what it looks like on the command line. So here's the movies, from the movies over here. Here's all the PNG files that were taken for my screenshots I've been doing. So again, once again, two views into the exact same data. So here I'm using the command line to see what's on my desktop. Here is the actual desktop. And of course, I could also look at it out here like this too. If I was down in JAXberg, so JAXberg, users JAXberg, and then go look at my desktop folder, which maybe it doesn't show that in the file system here anymore. I don't remember. Maybe it doesn't do that anymore. Yeah, maybe it doesn't do that on a Mac. But anyway, so you can see how I am now down in this folder, right? And the desktop is it's a directory like anything else, right? Go up, CD dot dot. So now I use that pwd command, and now I'm at that level, right? So let's say that I want to go right all the way back up, right, to the Macintosh hard drive level. So I can't I can't hit the left arrow anymore. I can't go up any higher in the file system folder structure anymore, right? It's only down from here, down into users, down into users. Come on now, right? Down into JAXberg, right? Continue going down. Now I'm all the way up. Well, could I do that on the command line? Yes, you can. So if I'm here in users JAXberg, I could do a CD dot dot. That takes me one up, right? Users. And notice now what the Mac does is it now is showing you right where you're at in the command in the prompt itself as well. Let's go up one more level, and now I'm at root, right? So this here is the root level of the file system. I can't go up any further. It's only down from here. Here, same thing, right? I can't CD dot dot, nothing happens, right? Because I am at the top level of the file system. Type in ls, right? And notice you're going to see more stuff out here. So indeed, we have the applications directory, just like the applications folder. We have the library, just like it is out here. We have system, just like it is out here. We have users, just like it is out here. But then there's a bunch of other directories: bin, core, dev, etc. Don't say etc, say etc. Home, opt, private. Those are all classic Unix directories because Mac is a Unix-based system, all right? Just like Linux is a Unix-based system, just like FreeBSD is a Unix-based system. Windows machines are not Unix systems. They are a completely different animal. And so any Unix, Linux, type machine that you go to, you're actually going to see directories like this. Now, these are directories that the average everyday user are never, ever, ever under any circumstances going to go and dink with. Even me, as a somewhat of a, kind of qualify myself as a somewhat of a power user, right? Even I'm not in these things, right? Because on a Mac, you really don't need to be there. But they are there because it is a Unix-based system. The way Unix, right, there's a bunch of files involved in making an operating system, and this is where they live, right? So this is where binary files go, config files go there, optional files go there, other binary files go there, variable files go there, all sorts of stuff, right? And you're going to see these same directories when we start working with Linux later in the semester around about module 6, right? So we see more stuff on the command line because, again, the command line really doesn't hide stuff, right? Whereas on the graphical user interface stuff, we're going to hide stuff from the user that they just really don't need to see. Now, there is some stuff, there are often sometimes things that you can do, right, where you can go in and have the graphical user interface show you more stuff. It's actually pretty easy to do on a Windows machine where you can go in and say, no, I want to see all this other stuff. But honestly, I don't do it because you just don't need to, right? So anyway, so here I am. So where am I at? PWD, I am at the root level of the file system. There's no going up here. There's only going down. So here is my users folder. So CD into users, right? CD into J Axberg, all right? Now, what if I wanted to go back up to the root level? Again, as we talked about, we could do CD dot dot, right? So we could do CD dot dot, up a level, CD dot dot, up a level. Where am I at? I'm at the root level, okay? So let's CD back down into users, hit return. CD back into J Axberg, hit return, right? Notice that when I'm in my home directory, the prompt changes to the tilde symbol. Tilde is the universal Unix indicator that you're in your home directory. That means you're back home, all right? It's shorthand that you are here, okay? Now, what if I want to go up to the root file system, but not doing it via CD dot dot? Well, one thing I could do is I could just say CD slash, right? Take me directly all the way to the top, and then boom, it pops me up. What if I want to go directly to users slash jaxberg? I just put in the whole path, hit return, and there I am. I'm back in my home directory, pwd, and there I am, okay? And so you can navigate around by using this thing called a path. Okay, so now let's say that I'm here, right? So I'm present working directory, I'm in users J Axberg. So what if I wanted to go, right, CD dot dot would take me up to users, right? And I could said that CD slash would take me all the way to the top, right? All the way to the top level of the file system, right? But like, how would I specify, for example, that I wanted to go to users? Well, one way to do it would be to do this, right? So let's just try it and see what happens here. So I'm saying I want to CD to users because right now I'm here, right? I'm in users and then one level under that. So I'm always looking down, right? The command line is always looking down, okay? And so I'm right now in this directory and I want to go to this directory. So what if I specified it like this, CD users, boom. And it's going to say there is no such file or directory. Well, what do you mean? Of course there is a users directory. Yeah, but the command line is always looking down. So if I do an ls in this directory, right? So I'm LSing the jaxberg directory in the users directory. There's apps, desktop, documents, downloads, ISO, library, movies. There's no users. Why? Because again, always looking down in the file system. It's always going down, down, down versus right up. So that's why it didn't know it. Again, it says apps, right? Vagrant, VM automation. Nope, there is no users under the jaxberg directory, all right? So one way you would do that then is you could always go back to the top of the file system to the root level of the file system and do this. Oops, need the capital U though, all right? So CD slash users, okay? And that will take me to the users directory as well, right? So you can always specify like what directory you wanted to be to. So like, for example, like what if I wanted to go directly to the VM automation directory? Well, I know it's going to be under users, jaxberg, and then VM automation, right? And it can take me directly there like that, okay? So a little bit about command line navigation. And again, if I wanted to get back to my home directory, I would, again, I'm down in VM automation, which is under the jaxberg, so I could do this, right? But if I was somewhere in the file system, like what if I was like this, somehow, some way I got into the etc directory, right? How do I get back home? Well, I know, for example, that you could just put in this, right? That'll take me back to my home directory where my files are at, or you can always use the shorthand of that tilde symbol. So just simply type CD tilde, and boom, that'll take you back to your home directory. Okay, and again, you can use the command line to go in, like, downloads there. Also remember that command lines are case sensitive, right? So if I do this, right, downloads, that won't work, right? Because, oops, sorry, let's go up a layer, right? So I'm here. So here is the downloads directory. If I do a cd downloads like this with a lowercase d, oops, I'm sorry, I think, oh, no, that's right. Macs actually will do that these days. I thought there was instances where it doesn't though. So if I do like VM automation, oh, it's working, huh? I guess Macs are allowing you to do, normally on a Linux system, if you use capital letters where there are no capital letters, it won't recognize it, right? And you have to type this in exactly. Macs seem to circumvent that these days, which I didn't actually know that they were doing. Anyway, play around with this, try and compare this to this and just kind of get a feel for using the command line to navigate around. Honestly, if you end up doing like system admin kind of work, development kind of work, certainly like in the web space and stuff, you will use the command line. It's used all the time. And as you get used to it right now, you might be thinking, I don't know what makes this better than this. And if you're not a very often user of having to deal with this stuff, like maybe you have been up until this point, no, there is no advantage to using this, right? It does seem kind of archaic and it does seem kind of dumb. And this stuff, right, works awesome, right up, this stuff here, the graphical user interface stuff, works awesome right up until the point where it doesn't, right? And eventually, right, once you get good at using the command line, the ebb and the flow and the sequences, and all that kind of stuff, right, you'll find that you're just far more efficient. All right, so awesome. We'll catch you in the next video. Bye.